G'day everyone, this is a solo Deathless Guardian run of the Everdark Sovereign Darkdrift Knight that's out this week. I did this run earlier today and I didn't happen to record at the time, but I am going to comment over it for this video because it was just a good example of a really kind of clean textbook Guardian run for a solo play at least that I thought was worth sharing. So we'll have a quick look at my relics. Now, there's probably three that I think are the most important. The 2 guard counter improvements. So guard counter is given a boost based on current health, and improved guard counters. Improved guard counters is 15% flat, and guard counters based on current HP scales, and it can be anywhere from about 10% up to about 30% apparently. I don't know how true that is, but it's quite powerful, especially if you're higher on health. And the third one that I think is quite useful is the Guardian-specific one, reflecting a portion of damage received when ability is activated. So this refers to your Steel Guard ability, your empowered dodge. Your empowered guard, where you dodge during the guard animation and you enter your Steel Guard stance, which is where you then reflect damage. That's quite good. The damage isn't amazing, it's consistent, but it also helps to build up and sustain stance damage as well. And as you'll see, stance breaking is a major part of the damage that we're going to do as the Guardian, particularly from guard counters, because guard counters do a very high amount of stance damage. So the rest of these relics here, the middle one that you can see there is particularly good. You get that after killing the Darkdrift Knight the first time around, not the Everdark Sovereign version 1, and because it also just gives you 2 other things that are great for Guardian. Increased max stamina is obviously very helpful. That allows us to, or contributes us to, guard countering more and more times in a row consecutively against any given boss that's attacking us. So max stamina is quite important. HP restoration on thrusting counterattacks. We do thrusting counterattacks with our halberd, so if you're not aware, a thrusting counterattack is any form of piercing damage, so it actually does apply to bows as well. But it's any form of piercing damage that is dealt to an enemy during their attack animation, or while they're in an attack animation, they take piercing damage. That's considered a thrusting counterattack. So we're obviously going to be doing that with our shield. A little bit of HP restoration is helpful, but not hugely significant. The top relic you can buy from the new collector's signboard after defeating an Everdark Sovereign and getting some of their currency. It's pretty good. You get art gauge charge from successfully guarding, which I think is 1% per instance of guard, or of guarding, which is actually pretty good. That'll rack up pretty quickly, certainly during bosses and things. With this, you really can use your ultimate quite liberally, because when you use it and don't channel at the bottom to protect your allies, it only uses like 70% of your art gauge, so it'll regenerate really quite quickly, and you can spam it just for the AoE damage at a moment of vulnerability. Endurance +3 is nice, that adds a little bit to our max stamina. And then on the bottom relic, this is just the best thing, the next best thing that I had that had guard counters on it. Inflicting Frost on the starting armament, which is kind of handy just for the start of the game, but with the Guardian's Arcane, it's really not that significant. You just take whatever you've got that has a guard counters on it. If you've got something better, absolutely take that. It is worth mentioning that some good contenders for the Guardian would be things like healing on post-damage attacks, so post-damage healing on attacks. That's quite nice because you're often taking little bits of chip damage here and there as the Guardian. During the guard counter animation, for example, you might take a hit, but then as soon as you execute the guard counter and connect the hit, you'll heal back some of that damage, things like that. Even if you're taking elemental damage through your shield, because your great shields, or any of your shields, won't absorb 100% of elemental damage, it can be really good for that as well. You take small amounts of chip damage through your shield, you can heal that back up with your guard counters and just any of your damage that you're dealing. So that's a good option as well. And then it is worth mentioning the best option, especially if you're new, and you're still trying to get solo runs under your belt. The Everjail relic, if you have it, you can buy it from the new collector signboard if you've defeated any of the Everdark Sovereigns. The Everjail relic that gives 5% permanent attack power per Everjail cleared is still going to be objectively your best relic. Assuming you can clear 3 or more Everjails, it's going to outweigh all the others. For example, the improved guard counters is 15% to guard counters. Well, if you can clear only 3 Everjails or 4 Everjails, it's already better than that, and you've got more value out of that because it applies to all your damage, not just guard counters. So, yeah, it's really quite a strong relic. I'm not using it just because I'm using it on every character and it's feeling a little old now. And I don't like to be restricted in terms of my routing and stuff. I like to just kind of go wherever and do whatever I feel like. I don't have to. I feel like I have to chase the Evergales down. So certainly you don't need to run it if you don't want to. If you don't like that feeling either. But it's also just so that I can test out different relics and see what other relics feel good. And I don't need every little bit of DPS anymore just because I've played so much of this game now. But certainly, if you're still new and still trying to get those first few solo wins down, you're going to get a lot of value, the most value, out of the Evergale relic. I'll put a screenshot up on the screen here if you don't know what the Evergale relic I'm talking about is, or the power that I'm talking about, because yeah, it's quite strong. You might happen to have one in your relics somewhere, or you might have to wait until you've killed an Everdark Sovereign, and you'll be able to buy it from the merchant, because you can get it deterministically from one of the new merchants. Now, as you can see here, the Crystallian Evergale is, I think, probably one of the worst to get. It's just particularly slow. You have to stance break all of them individually, and as you can see, the Guardian's damage is really nothing special, especially early. The Guardian does have the worst offensive stats of all the classes. So, being a weapon user, he's got a B in strength and a C in dexterity, which is pretty poor. Every other class, as far as I know, has at least an A in their primary damage dealing stat, whereas the Guardian's is B. So it does lean towards either strength weapons or quality weapons, which is using a combination of, they scale with both strength and dex. But yeah, so most halberds are gonna scale with strength and dex secondary anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about that as long as you're using halberds. But he can use most weapons fine in terms of their stat distribution or scaling. It's just that his scaling is not particularly strong. So, all right, so I've killed that first Evergale, and as you can see, it took quite a while. That's just the way the Crystallians go, especially on the Guardian with his low damage. Something like the Raider will kill that a little quicker, but the Crystallians are probably one of the slowest Evergales to get at level 2 or 3 or 4. So that's just how it goes. I'm going to take these lightning greases here. As you note, I'm picking those up just purely because I don't know what weapons I'm going to get throughout the game are going to be. And if I don't happen to get a lightning relic, a lightning weapon, then I want the option to do lightning damage on this boss, being the Darkdrift Knight. He has a weakness to lightning that I'll explain when we get there if you're not familiar with it. And it's worth having a source of lightning damage for the final boss. So I will literally hoard those lightning greases the entire run, just so that depending on what weapon I get, if I don't have a lightning weapon, I've got at least a source of lightning damage. You can see I've already got 3 there and some lightning pots, but I'll probably use those. So at this point, the map's kind of moved in a funny direction, and I'm just going to move to Castle to see what I can get. I don't know yet whether it's going to be Banished Knights, Crucible Knights, or Trolls, but it does turn out to be Banished Knights. So I do spend most of the rest of this day farming here, and it's actually not too bad. It's pretty easy to farm these as the Guardian. Now, situations like this is fantastic for the Guardian to just use his ulti and not charge it, just purely use it as a damaging ulti. You can see how much is left on the gauge there. It's at least 70 or 60%, and as soon as you start attacking and getting some guard counters out, you can see it just start to shoot back up pretty quickly. And it does charge up quite quickly. I use it a number of times during this castle run, so you do want to use it pretty liberally. Now, as you can see, we're level 5, we're level 6 now. We're coming online a little bit, and pretty much the entire strategy is to guard counter everything. You can see I'm just steel guarding, which is, if you're not familiar with it, by the way, I have just talked about it generically. During the guarding animation, if you dodge, and you'll see me do it constantly here, you enter this kind of slower walking stance where you are in an empowered guarding state, which just means that you take less stamina damage when guarding. You might also deflect things a little easier, as in deflect bigger weapons, but that's less important. It's more about the stamina damage consumed. With this active, you can straight up tank entire combos from major bosses that would otherwise just drop your entire stamina bar in a single guard. There you go, as you can see that. Now that there is just me, that's my weapon skill, Charge Forth. That is actually just me misclicking. If you've watched my keyboard and mouse bindings video, which you probably haven't, it's just purely for the few people that are interested in keyboard and mouse. There is a slight nuance to go from, on the keyboard bindings and mouse bindings, going from guarding to a guard counter, and with the way that you have shift as a modifier for your attacks and heavy attacks, if you click and release buttons in the wrong order, you can actually hit shift too early to the point where you're, instead of doing a guard counter, you use your skill like I did just there as well. So if I'm not like paying attention, it's pretty easy to do just to mistime it, which is a bit of a drawback. It's probably one of the biggest drawbacks, I think, actually, of the which is not a big deal really, but of the keyboard and mouse bindings. But anyway, I digress. As you can see, I'm just working my way through these Banished Knights. They're not super quick to kill, but they're pretty easy and pretty reliable with the Guardian just guard countering everything. And as you can see, two full guard counters is enough to stance break them. That's one, and they're doing pretty reasonable damage, like not massive. There you go, that's 2 guard counters, and we've stance broken them, and we can do a critical. So it's quite reliable. The massive stance damage that you do from guard counters is really quite impressive, and it will, as I've said earlier, it'll allow you to just stance break everything as you go. Don't underestimate the Whirlwind ability as well on the Guardian. You should be spamming that probably more often than I'm even using it. It's a good... It will kind of stun or mini stun mobs of humanoid size all the way up to pretty much everything excluding Crucible Knights. So Banished Knights, Red Mane Knights, Golden Knights, they will all get stunned, or like mini stunned, by the Whirlwind ability. A good relic actually, alternative relic that you can take if you happen to have it on, for example, if you have it on a relic that also has guard counters, that would be incredible. Improved guard counters. You could use the relic that increases, it's the Guardian specific one, increases the duration of the character skill, being Whirlwind. That turns it into a persisting Whirlwind for about 3 or 4 seconds that will just perma-stun whatever's in it. That's really quite strong, especially for fighting things like Banished Knights in particular, because they will just get stunned, just literally stun-locked for like 3 or 4 seconds in this Whirlwind, and you can just do 2 fully charged heavy attacks, or whatever you want to do, really, and you'll kill everything. It's quite easy, and it's really, really effective kind of CC and stun lock tool. In co-op in particular, it's really good just to help your team stun lock things. It can be a little annoying for some players. I've heard comments and complaints on comment threads and forums and things, people saying that the actual animation of it is too visually impairing, like it gets in the way and you can't see anything. But I did see, so this is, I'll come back to this, but this Cold Lance, I use it for a good portion of the run. Cold Lance with multiple periodic glint blades. So it's magic damage, so it's actually not the best scaling, but I have pretty poor scaling anyway. But it does have Frostbite build up, it has Hoarfrost Stomp, and it has multiple periodic glint blades. So it's enough there that I'm going to use it for now. But it is only a great spear, and that's important. I'll come back to that. I also pick up this Spiral Horn shield here. It is a small shield, which means that it has a lower hardness, and I'll talk about hardness in a minute. But it is a high guard boost, and I'll also talk about guard boost in a minute. If I can remember what I was saying before I went on both of those tangents. Oh yes, the Whirlwind skill. I did see in one of the recent patch notes that they did, one of the kind of bug fixes and patch notes, that they did reduce the visual impairment that skill has, so it should be a little better now. Feel free to use it in co-op. It is the kind of crowd control that it provides your team is really quite strong. It allows your Duchesses and your Executors just to stand there and just combo chain whatever's getting knocked around and stun locked in your Whirlwind. So it's quite good. Now, let's talk about these 2 weapons that I just picked up, because there is a few considerations to be aware of when you're playing the Guardian. First thing, halberds. The Guardian has, it's his preferred weapon, but there's a few unwritten things that does for you. The first is that you can charge your guard counters. That's the main thing. The ability to charge the guard counter obviously increases the damage, increases the stance damage a little bit, I think. More importantly, it increases the range of as in the literal distance that you travel while guard countering, to be pretty impressive. And it just ensures, or it really helps for you to, it helps you connect your guard counters more consistently, regardless of, sometimes attacks knock you back, sometimes the bosses are moving quite quickly or traveling around quite a bit. And traveling and moving quite a fair distance forward while you're doing a guard counter can be the difference between landing the attack and not. And more often it is. So you will see that a little bit. Now, I'll speak about this boss very quickly. It's an annoying boss. You have to watch your Death Blight build up. Because the Guardian's DPS is just not particularly high, even so I just spammed Hoarfrost Stomp a little bit there to get as much DPS in as I could to proc Frostbite quickly, and Hoarfrost Stomp's just quite a strong ability in itself. Even then I could only get the health bar down below half health. You know, if you're on the Raider or even the Wilder or someone, you just delete this boss. As soon as they spawn, you just delete them. But I'm going to have to back off and play the actual mechanics of the fight, which is to go and kill the enemies around the outside, pick up some of these rejuvenating boluses, which is the curing the Death Blight, and I'll have to I'll have to go in and out and give this a few attempts here, which is fine. But I'll keep chipping away at this boss. So, halberds versus great spears. So the consideration, as I mentioned, halberds get the charged guard counter, whereas great spears don't. So on the great spear, I'm not going to be able to charge my guard counters, which means it does mean that the guard counters are quite quick, which is quite valuable. The guard counters are really quick. The charging animation on the halberd guard counters is quite slow and it takes a lot of time, whereas the guard counters, just a raw uncharged guard counter on a great spear, is quite quick, and it still does very high, because it is a great class weapon, it's a great spear, it still does very high damage and very high stance damage in particular, but it's quite short ranged. Your feet are pretty much stay planted while you're doing it, and you have to... I actually missed my ulti there, which is a shame, otherwise it probably would have gone close to killing him. And as you'll see here in a second, he just literally walks on out of the arena and hangs out there for quite a while. So it's quite a slow, boring boss fight. But anyway, I'll keep discussing the weapons. Yeah, it's got quite a short range on the guard counter. Whilst it's quick and still does good damage and stance damage, it's quite a short range. So it's a bit of a trade-off, because the speed of the guard counter is quite nice, but it just means that you'll see me miss quite a few guard counters. So just a consideration to be aware of. The moveset's a little different, but for the most part, while you're using a shield, it's still very much just a kind of thrusting, just a forward thrusting motion. As you can see, he's still hanging out there, but he's low enough now from those periodic... Oh, I did miss him actually. And then he runs me around a little bit. Yeah, pretty frustrating fight, as you can see, but I just nicked him there with that whirlwind. Anyway, so that's the Great Spears versus Halberd consideration. It is a drawback of the class. I think the class is weak enough, is maybe not the right way to say it, but certainly not overpowered enough that they couldn't just let all weapons be charged with the guard counters. Like, I don't see why they don't just allow the Guardian to charge all of their guard counters regardless of weapon. That would be nice to see. But anyway, it is what it is. Only halberd attacks can charge the guard counters. So that's your consideration for the Great Spear versus the... Because otherwise their damage and their moveset feels pretty similar. It's just a thrusting heavy weapon, you know, as you can see here. Hoarfrost Stomp is nice to kind of collect some AoE damage like that, you can see there, and proc Frostbite quite quickly. But I do have to back up there quickly because they nearly chunked me pretty quickly. So let's talk about shields and the stats on shields and some considerations for shields. So this shield now that I've got is a small shield. Now, if you're not aware, small, medium, and great shields do have a difference in terms of stats. Typically, not always, but typically great shields are going to have a higher guard boost, but they also, by default, just due to the nature of their weapon or shield category, being a great shield or being a small shield, have a different hardness stat. Now, hardness is the thing that determines whether an attack, a weapon attack, will bounce off your shield, whether it'll follow through the attack. Like, you'll still block the damage, but whether they don't get staggered or mini-stunned, or whether they bounce off you completely. And that depends on the hardness of the shield. That's what the stat's actually called. You can look up Elden Ring hardness stat or something, and you'll be able to read on it on one of the Fextra Life wikis or something if you want to read more. But basically, a great shield, most minor enemies in the game will actually, even up to including these Banished Knights, you would have seen them earlier doing it, but not these ones. If you do want to scroll back, you'll see what I mean. Their attacks will literally bounce off my shield, and it'll almost mini-stun them, kind of, like they'll recoil a little bit backwards. Whereas with the small shield, they don't get bounced off, they don't get recoiled in any way. We still block the damage, because they've still got 100% physical negation. You just don't get that recoil, which can be quite useful. The recoil can help to create openings for your guard counters, all sorts of things. So that's the hardness stat, and that is dependent on the actual category of shield that you're using, nothing else. That's not true. Barricade shield, which is a skill that you'll get on some shields, increases the tier of hardness by 1, or up to level 4 or something. Barricade shield will make most things bounce off your shield. That's the actual skill on the shield though. But otherwise, it's just purely dependent on the shield itself. Now, and this is ridiculous, I literally get knocked off like 3 or 4 times in a row here just trying to get back up and fight these damn mobs. The line up there, and the line knocks me off. You've just seen it 2 or 3 times already. Knocks me off several times, and I'm just trying to get back up there and fight them, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, so I run all the way up here to just be like, all right, I'm here now and I'm fighting. All right. So as you can see, that guard counter there is much quicker. See how quick that guard counter is? It's a little weaker, but it's a really quick. We'll just watch a few more here. Oh. So that's what happens if you don't activate the steel guard in time, or you just misclick or whatever. You will just get chunked. Your entire stamina bar will get chunked. So as you can see there was 1 or 2 guard counters that I did miss because there was just not enough range on it at all. But all in all, a decent trade-off. Quick, very quick guard counters versus slower guard counters that do more damage, more stance damage, and reach much further. So overall, the halberd one is better because you can still do an uncharged one and just choose to charge it when it's appropriate. So, and that'll be the difference between really mastering the Guardian and not knowing when to charge your guard counter and when not to charge your guard counter. Because sometimes on certain enemies like Crucible Knights and things, you often don't have enough time to charge the guard counter, and you just want to do a basic uncharged one. So just considerations there. You'll get used to that as you play more Guardian. So that's the hardness stat. The last stat on the shield to be aware of, and it is typically kind of goes in hand with the category of shield, but not always. It's not like a hard and fast rule, is your guard boost. Typically, great shields and larger shields will have a higher guard boost, but not always. This is a small shield that I've got, and it's actually got a decent, it's got quite a decent guard boost on it of 71, I think it had when I picked it up. Guard boost is the stat that determines how much stamina gets consumed when you guard an attack. It's arguably the most, it's really the only stat that you look at when you're comparing shields. There is, in the background, if you want to look back in the round table hold, if you want to compare the different elemental resistances of different, like specific different shields, as in there's a red main knight shield, there's a bronze shield, there's a, whatever. They will all have different elemental resistances. That can be important and good to know, but you often have very little control over that. And you can't see that in-game is the main... You can't see that in-game. So very rarely will you actually be making any decisions based on that unless you know them all off by heart or you're looking on a cheat sheet on your other screen or something. But I'd say that's unlikely. The main thing that you want to compare in-game when you're looking at shields is your guard boost. Higher guard boost is better. It means you use less... So guard boost 71 there, for example, right? 71 is a decent stat. If you can get something up in the 80s, or you can get... the passive abilities that increase your guard boost, you get like 10% increased guarding ability, which literally just increases your guard boost stat. That's what it does. You can get up to in the kind of high 80s and 90s pretty easily with only 1 or 2 of those, which is quite nice. And that'll just mean that you use less stamina per guard, which means you can guard more things in a row. You can get more steel guards in a row, doing more reflection damage, building up more damage and more stance damage. It's just... it's the stat to look for with shields is your guard boost. So, and that's what it actually does. It's the only number on the shield, so it probably is what you were comparing anyway. But just understand that that's what it actually does. It reduces the amount, or determines the amount of stamina consumed when guarding. So, and obviously, less stamina consumed is better. So, as you can see here, I'll just talk to what's actually happening in the game here briefly. I'm heading down into the crater because it's the crater shifting earth. I'd farmed the castle for most of day 1. I'd finished most of the castle. I hadn't killed the major boss at the top or even the boss down in the cellar, but I'd farmed there for long enough. I had plenty of runes and I thought it might be good to go down. At this point, I was thinking I would upgrade my my lance, the icy lance that I have. The Darkdrift Knight boss is weak to all status ailments, except for madness, but no one ever really uses madness. You just never see madness, really. But Frost, Bleed, Poison, and Rot, Darkdrift Knight is fully weak to all of them. So having a Frost weapon actually will do a bit of work for me on this last boss. And so at this point, I'm thinking that I'll upgrade. If I get nothing else, I'll upgrade the the cold lance that I have to legendary at the forge at the bottom here. So you also get a couple of bosses and a few bits of, a few runes and things on the way down. So just from killing the this boss here and the boss further down at the bottom. So that's what I'm doing, and that's my plan at this stage. I'm so slow on the Guardian because the Guardian's damage still is just like the raw stats, and the scaling on the Guardian is just never going to compare to the Raider, for example, or Duchess's kind of damage that she can do, even the Wilder and Ionized kind of damage. So you're just always going to be a little bit slower, which is fine, but with guard counters you can still make pretty short work of most bosses by guard countering and breaking stances and getting criticals. Now this one here, 6% attack power would be good, but I'm actually choosing to take this one for the passive. Taking damage boosts damage negation, 36%, which is huge. So whenever you take damage, you then negate damage for, I'm not sure what it's, let's say it's 5 seconds or 10 seconds. You then gain a damage negation buff for the next few seconds, which reduces the damage you take. So this is one of your two best friends in terms of defensive passives, because whenever you take damage, you often take damage in combos. So bosses are often doing big, flippy, spinny combos that will connect you and a few hits in a row. And you also often get hit by things like grab attacks that also often do multiple instances of damage. And after the very first instance of damage, you'll then start to negate the damage by 36%, which is a really large amount just to be just completely passively healing and negating damage. So that's really powerful. The other really good defensive passive that you should always look for is successive attacks negates damage, unless you're on the Iron Eye or a spellcaster, because they don't actually proc the successive attacks. But any melee character that's just hitting the boss, successive attacks negates damage, means that after it's like 3 or 5 hits in a row in a short enough time window, and you'll get a little bubble shield on you that will negate the damage of the first hit against you, or the next hit against you, by whatever it is. It's either 36, 48, or 60%. This is really nice, and they especially go nice together because after 3 to 5 hits, you'll get a little bubble shield on you. That will negate the damage of the first hit against you, and then that first hit against you, the damage will be negated, but you'll still take damage. So then you're taking damage, gives you damage negation, up to damage negation. So as you can see, the guard counters are missing there. They're just too short to reach the boss. So they're a really good passive combo to get on any character except for Iron Eye and the spellcasters. Any of your melee characters, arguably, oh sorry, I just bumped the mic. Arguably the best combination of passives to get, certainly defensively, and I'd argue probably just at all. Getting those two will just add a lot to your run, certainly in solo. Just a lot of defensive and survivability. So that's enough on those two passives. Good ones to watch out for. As you can see, I'm stance breaking the worm, but my damage is just so low that I'm just chipping away at him slowly. Not much that can be helped there. It's kind of a major boss at the pinnacle boss of a Shifting Earth, which typically are quite tough bosses in terms of their scaling. So I have no choice here but to just chip away quite slowly. These great magma worms are not particularly dangerous. They've got a few of the magma worm guillotine attacks to watch out for, the big weapon that it has, which is a really cool weapon in game actually if you can get it. Although it's a curved sword, so it's better on dex characters, but anyway, I digress. That swooping kind of sweep is one to watch out for. The overhead slam and any of these kind of fire, magma breath attacks. But otherwise, yeah, they're not too dangerous. It's pretty easy to just keep moving back around the kind of sides of their hind legs and doing some chip damage. Certainly on the Guardian, you can just block all of those sword attacks that it does. And as you can see, I've just kind of slowly chipped it down. Unfortunately, I don't think Frostbite does any damage on this. So, Dragon Halberd is a fantastic weapon. Guard counters activate wholly. Any of those dormant powers that activate things on guard counter are all really nice to get on the Guardian. But the Dragon Halberd is going to be my best friend here, and I choose to... my best option, and I choose to upgrade that to Legendary. So, if you're not familiar with the Dragon Halberd, it might look fairly basic. It's just a plain halberd. But its weapon skill, Spinning Slash, is actually a very powerful weapon skill. That is a lightning. It's a frost lightning skill that also imbues your weapon for like a minute or maybe 90 seconds even with frost and lightning. And you'll see it in a minute when I activate it, but it's the same moveset as Spinning Slash, so you can activate 2 inputs and it'll do 1 spin and then a second spin and a kind of downward slam. But the one on the Dragon Halberd also buffs the weapon for quite a while, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, with frost build-up and lightning damage. So that's perfect, and I was aware of this when I chose it, obviously, because this boss, I need a source of lightning damage. So the lightning greases that I've been hoarding all game are now no longer useful. They still might be useful just because I don't have a whole lot of FP. I don't have a large mind stat, and so I might run out of mind on a longer fight if I don't have Starlight Shards, in which case I could use the lightning greases if I really needed a lightning source. But otherwise, the buff on the weapon is going to be stronger because it'll also do frostbite build-up, which is obviously valuable in itself. So I replaced the, and you'll be able to see it just here in a second when I attack this Demi-Human Queen. So that's the attack there, and that's the second input. So the first spin is the first input, and then the second input is, you'll see here again, 1 input. Second input is the second spin and slam overhead. Just a point to note, in general on skills, it's always good to actually click on the ability and read it. I haven't here because I know what the ability does, but if you're not familiar with abilities or the first time you see them, always click on them and read them because they often will have follow-up attacks, follow-up heavy attacks, or follow-up from the same input. This was me just looking for the Site of Grace, but one of the mobs must have been standing on it, so it was all grayed out and I didn't see it, which is annoying because I would have liked to top up my FP before the boss fight, but I didn't get the chance to, which is no big deal. So skills will often have, some kind of follow-up with heavy attack or follow-up with another skill input. And it's good to be aware of that because you might be missing half or a lot of the value of the skill. For example, Golden Land, it's not just the slam into the ground and the projectiles. There's then a full heavy attack afterwards that's quite valuable, right? So just, one thing to note if you are new, read the skills because they often have, sometimes, not always, they sometimes have more to them than initially meets the eye. So this is the Dragonkin boss. A little annoying on the Guardian, but I've learnt the kind of way to fight it on the Guardian since the first few times I versed it, which is basically to not lock on at all and to manually aim in certain directions when you're guard counting. Because otherwise, and you'll see when the boss spawns, there's, and as you can see there, the like guard counters are just so strong. There's this Dragonkin soldier has a fairly dead hitbox in its kind of groin and chest region. And so you can hit the back of its legs like this fine, and it's a good way to start. But then if you're doing guard counters from its frontal hand attacks, and you try and just guard counter on the chest lock on, you're not going to hit. It's just you're going to miss. So you actually want to remain unlocked and aim to the sides, to the arms or legs, like manually aim with, I assume you can just kind of manually aim in a direction on the... See, that's what will happen. You'll just miss them like that. That was just because I was too far away, that particular one. But you'll see throughout this fight, I will be manually aiming to the legs and arms. And I assume you can do the same thing on the console easily enough. Let's have a look. Here we are. So that one there, obviously, I was too far away. But you could see even then just how far the charged guard counters travel. I was so far away that I still didn't reach, but it does travel quite a fair distance. And see that, how I'm kind of manually aiming in towards the legs and the arm without actually being locked on? That's the best way to fight this boss as the Guardian, if you are going down the guard counter route, which I don't know how else you play on the Guardian, to be fair. With guard counters, you actually feel pretty strong. Without guard counters, just chipping away with light attacks, you'd be feeling pretty weak, I would imagine. There you go, as you can see. And there's, I think that was 3 or 4 actually well-connected guard counters, and that's a stance break, which is quite valuable. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get the critical for some reason. It didn't connect there, but not to worry. Now, just something to note with these lightning attacks, you don't have to go crazy running out. You just look for the dead spot. As in, just look for the kind of open spot. See that? And then if there's nothing, you might have to dodge or run out. Ooh. Some of those frontal dashes do have a 2-part kind of slash. He'll slash with one hand and then follow through with the rest of his body another hand. So, but often it's just one side like that. And you can just go and guard counter straight into the arm or leg on whichever side you're on. Now I am choosing, I could just ulti here, but I am choosing to save it because the first half of the fight that we're coming up to on the Everdark Sovereign Darkdrift Knight, I find the first half harder, and I want my ulti for the first half, not for the second half. If I used it now, it probably wouldn't be ready. So I'm choosing just to take this a little longer and a little more risky, not that I'm in any particular danger. Sorry, I knocked the mic again. Not that I'm in any particular danger, but I'm choosing to hold my ulti here so that I do actually have it for the start of the next boss. And as you can see, it wasn't giving me too much grief anyway. I'd run out of FP, but I kind of knew that would happen because I hadn't topped it up before the fight, which I told you about. Now, improved flask HP restoration. That's actually one of the best dormant powers that you can get. Max health and all these things are good to kind of prevent one hits and prevent you getting 100 to 0 easily. But in terms of your total effective health pool, which is, you know, how much effective health you actually have with all your flasks combined, put together, if it was one big long health bar, getting 20 or 30% to your flask HP restoration amount is actually the biggest thing that you can do to improve your effective health pool over the course of an entire fight. Because that's, you know, 15% more HP is great, and that'll help you not get one shot. But that's only 15% HP the first time you walk into the boss, like right now when you're fresh. And then after that, you have to top your health up. And if you don't have a big enough flask, you're not even going to get topped up to that new, you know, particularly high health bar that you have. So, whereas increasing 20% on all your flasks, all 7 of your flasks, well, that's now, you know, 20% more across 6 out of your 7 flasks worth of health. Sorry, all 7 of your flasks worth of health, just not including your initial health bar. So it's actually a much bigger buff to your effective health pool. And it's one of the most valuable ones you can get. So, Darkdrift Knight. Unsurprisingly, and unfortunately that guard counter there missed. Now here you'll see, now that there is what the point of having lightning damage is. When he charges his blade in front of him, if you deal any source of lightning damage, it'll break him out of it. And as you can see, I've already guard countered him there after just 3, maybe 4 guard counters, which are really quite easy because they do travel so far with the halberd. And that's how guard counters can carry you as the Guardian. Like, they just stance break so easily. Now we're into phase 2 here, which was actually quite quick because of a few frostbite procs. I'm choosing to ulti there purely because I thought I'd outplay him and ulti those, but I actually mistimed it and then wasted the whole charge anyway, so that was some pretty poor play. But anyway, and I didn't even get the damage from the ulti because I mistimed it and I thought I'd use it to avoid the damage, but I actually just missed it. So anyway, so as you can see, we're now in this phase. We've got a bunch of these holy kind of dual lightsaber moves, and you do have to be careful. You can guard the final landing from that aerial hit, but you have to be careful because if you're not facing him or you dodge into it as he lands, it can hit you in the back. That is a risk on the Guardian. Depending on where these different kind of funny AoE attacks land and where you're standing and facing, they can still kind of hit you from behind. For this attack here, just run underneath him. That's all you need to do. Just sprint underneath him and you'll get out of that explosion. It's harder in co-op because there's people everywhere and you don't know who he's actually locked onto. Watch this here, ready? There's 1 or 2 more of those attacks, so I'll point it out again next time. But when he does the helicopter above his head with the double lightsaber, you need to dodge through him and then away out the back and just run. And I'll point it out again next time. This is the 3-part attack, 1, 2 in quick succession, and then 3. And again, I tried to block that, but it actually didn't work again. The AoE landing nicked me from the side. You can guard counter it. I do it in a minute here, but yeah, just worth noting. Another thing worth noting is that all the holy attacks from these lightsaber, like the glowing lightsaber attacks, this one here for example, they do actually go through, there'll be a portion of the damage that goes through my guard, so I'm actually choosing to dodge the first 2 attacks in that combo and only guard the 3rd one because I do want to still get the guard counter off. So I'm dodging the first 2 just to preserve as much health as I can, and then I'll guard the 3rd landing to then guard counter as he lands, because there's a decent window there to do so. Watch here, ready? So 2 dodges, and then I'm going to dodge backwards, and unfortunately that knocked me back too much. Okay, here's the lightsaber. So dodge through, and then back, and then run. and he'll do the whole combo and you'll be out of its range. So you want to dodge through behind him and then back once more to get further away behind him and then just run back. That one there, the shot comes out so quickly. If it hits you, it actually doesn't do the most damage, that one, so it's not a big deal. But you can see just how many stance breaks I'm getting off here, which is really the power of guard countering. And I mean, I've still got 4 flasks there, so quite a comfortable fight, to be honest, as you can see. Just guarding and guard countering stance breaks. There was probably 3 or 4 stance breaks in that fight, and I mean the damage is so low that I could do 3 or 4 stance breaks, but still. But that's kind of what the Guardian does. A little lower in terms of damage output and DPS, but quite reliable and reliable stance breaks with those guard counters. So there you go. That's a solo Deathless run as the Guardian. Fairly textbook, like nothing too crazy in terms of RNG or amazing items. The Dragon Halberd's pretty good, but yeah, that's a pretty typical run that you should be able to replicate without too much difficulty once you've obviously practiced the guard countering playstyle and the Guardian's playstyle. So anyway, hope you enjoy the run. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff as usual. Thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers.